Sarah Mitchell had always been different from other girls in her small Oklahoma town. While her friends played with dolls, she was outside building tree forts and learning to shoot with her grandfather's old rifle. When other teenagers were worried about prom dresses, Sarah was doing push-ups at 5 a.m. and running 10 miles before school. Her parents thought it was just a phase, but Sarah knew better. She had a calling that pulled at her heart every single day. The day she turned 18, Sarah walked into the Navy recruitment office in downtown Tulsa. The recruiter, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, looked surprised when this petite blonde girl announced she wanted to become a Navy SEAL. He tried to explain gently that women weren't allowed in SEAL training, but Sarah had done her research. She knew the rules were changing, slowly but surely. "I'll wait," she told him firmly. "And when the door opens, I'll be the first one through it." For 2 years, Sarah prepared like her life depended on it. She joined the Navy as a hospital corpsman, excelling in every training program they put her through. She learned emergency medicine, combat tactics, and survival skills. Her instructors noticed something special about the quiet girl who never complained and never gave up. While other sailors went to bars on weekends, Sarah was in the gym or studying medical textbooks. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning in 2016. The Pentagon had officially opened all combat roles to women, including the elite Navy SEALs. Sarah's heart pounded as she read the news on her phone. This was it. This was her moment. Within hours, she had submitted her application for SEAL training. The response came back faster than expected. She was accepted for the preliminary screening. The screening took place at Naval Special Warfare Command in Coronado, California. Sarah arrived with 12 other candidates, all men who looked like they could bench press a small car. She could feel their eyes on her as she checked in, some curious, others skeptical. The instructors seemed equally surprised to see her there. "You sure you're in the right place, sailor?" asked Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, a barrel-chested man with arms covered in tattoos. "Yes, Chief," Sarah replied calmly. "I'm here for SEAL screening." The next 3 days were the hardest of Sarah's life up to that point. The physical tests pushed everyone to their absolute limits. 500-meter swims in freezing ocean water, timed runs on soft sand that felt like quicksand, endless push-ups and pull-ups until muscles screamed in protest. One by one, the other candidates dropped out or failed to meet the standards. Sarah's small frame worked against her in some areas. She couldn't do as many pull-ups as the men, and her swimming times were slower. But what she lacked in raw strength, she made up for in determination and endurance. While bigger men collapsed from exhaustion, Sarah kept going. When others quit during the brutal runs, she pushed through the pain. On the final day of screening, only Sarah and 3 men remained. The last test was a psychological evaluation, followed by a grueling interview with senior SEAL officers. Sarah sat in a sterile white room across from Commander Johnson, a legendary SEAL with over 20 years of experience. "Why do you want this, Mitchell?" he asked, his steel-gray eyes studying her face. Sarah had practiced this answer 1,000 times, but now she spoke from the heart. "Because I believe I can make a difference, sir. I believe I have something to offer that could save lives and serve our country. I'm not here to prove a point about women. I'm here because being a SEAL is who I'm meant to be." The commander nodded slowly. "You know that if you make it through, you'll face challenges that have nothing to do with the training. Some people won't accept you. Some will try to make you fail just because you're different." "I understand, sir," Sarah replied. "But I also know that every barrier that gets broken makes it easier for the next person who's different. Maybe that's part of my mission, too." 2 weeks later, Sarah received orders to report to Basic Underwater Demolition/SEAL training, known simply as BUD/S. She would be the first woman ever to attempt the 6-month program that had broken thousands of tough men. The news leaked to the press despite the Navy's attempts at secrecy. Suddenly, Sarah found herself at the center of a national debate about women in combat. Reporters called her family's house constantly. Protesters gathered outside the naval base, some supporting her, others demanding she be removed from the program. Sarah tried to ignore the noise and focus on her preparation, but the pressure was overwhelming. She knew that every eye would be on her, waiting for her to fail. The night before BUD/S began, Sarah sat alone on the beach near the training compound. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly before her, dark and intimidating. Tomorrow, she would begin the most difficult military training in the world. She thought about all the people who believed in her, and all those who wanted to see her fail. But mostly, she thought about the little girl from Oklahoma who used to dream impossible dreams. A voice behind her broke the silence.
"Mind if I sit?" Sarah turned to see Chief Rodriguez, the instructor from her screening. He settled onto the sand beside her.
"Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," Sarah admitted. The chief chuckled. "Good. That means you're smart enough to know what you're getting into." He was quiet for a moment, watching the waves. "You know, I've been doing this for 15 years, seen a lot of tough guys come through. Most of them talk big, but when things get really hard, they fold. You're different. How can you tell? Because you're still here. After all the attention, all the pressure, all the people telling you to quit before you even start, you're still here. That tells me something." Sarah felt a small spark of confidence for the first time in weeks. "Thank you, Chief." "Don't thank me yet," Rodriguez said with a grin.
"Tomorrow I'm going to try my best to make you quit. It's nothing personal. It's my job."
The next morning arrived gray and cold. Sarah stood with 47 other candidates on the beach as the sun slowly rose over the ocean. Class 234 was about to begin. The head instructor, an intimidating SEAL named Master Chief Peterson, walked slowly down the line of candidates. "Look around you," he shouted. 80% of you will not be here at the end of this program. Some of you will quit today. Some will quit tomorrow. Some will make it weeks before you realize you don't have what it takes. But a few of you, a very few, will earn the right to call yourselves Navy SEALs." His eyes stopped on Sarah. "Some of you are here to make history. Others are here to make headlines. I don't care which one you are. All I care about is whether you can do the job when lives are on the line." The training began immediately. Physical training at dawn, followed by running, swimming, obstacle courses, and classroom instruction. The pace was relentless. Every day brought new challenges designed to push candidates beyond their breaking point. Sarah struggled with some of the physical requirements, especially the heavy equipment carries and rope climbing, but she refused to give up. Her fellow candidates' attitudes toward her varied. Some were openly hostile, muttering comments about special treatment and political correctness. Others were supportive, helping her with techniques and encouraging her during tough moments. A few seemed to view her as a curiosity, watching to see what would happen but keeping their distance. One candidate who stood out was Jake Morrison, a former Marine from Texas. Jake was everything Sarah wasn't. Tall, powerfully built, and naturally gifted at every physical challenge. But he was also fair-minded and respectful. When other candidates made crude comments about Sarah, Jake shut them down quickly. "She's here same as us," he would say firmly. "If she can't hack it, the training will wash her out. If she can, then she belongs here." 3 weeks into Bud/S, the infamous Hell Week arrived. 5.5 days of continuous training with almost no sleep. Candidates would be pushed to their absolute physical and mental limits. Many would voluntarily withdraw by ringing the brass bell that stood prominently in the training compound. Hell Week began on a Sunday evening with Breakout, a chaotic night of surprise exercises designed to shock candidates into the reality of what lay ahead. Sarah found herself crawling through mud, carrying heavy logs with her boat crew, and enduring freezing cold water while instructors screamed orders and created confusion. By Tuesday morning, 15 candidates had already quit. Sarah was exhausted beyond anything she had ever experienced, but she kept going. Her small size actually helped during some exercises, allowing her to fit through obstacles that gave bigger men trouble. But the log carries and boat races were torture for her. During one particularly brutal boat race, Sarah's crew fell behind the others. The instructors singled them out for extra punishment, making them do push-ups in the surf while waves crashed over them. Sarah's arms shook with exhaustion, but she held the position even as other crew members collapsed. "Mitchell!" Chief Rodriguez yelled. "You having fun yet?" "Hoo-yah, Chief," Sarah gasped, using the SEAL battle cry. "I can't hear you." "Hoo-yah, Chief!" Wednesday night brought hypothermia concerns as candidates spent hours in the cold Pacific Ocean. Several men were pulled out by medical staff, their core body temperatures dangerously low. Sarah's lips were blue and her whole body shook uncontrollably, but she stayed in the water. The medics checked on her repeatedly, clearly worried about her smaller body mass and ability to maintain heat. "I'm okay," she insisted through chattering teeth. "I can keep going." By Thursday, only 23 candidates remained from the original 48. Sarah was still there, though she looked like a ghost of her former self. Her face was gaunt, her eyes hollow from lack of sleep. Every muscle in her body ached, and she had developed a persistent cough from the cold water exposure. The log P, physical training on Thursday afternoon, nearly broke her. Carrying a 200-pound telephone pole with her boat crew for miles along the beach, Sarah stumbled repeatedly. The log seemed to get heavier with each step. Other crew members had to compensate for her smaller size, and she could see the frustration in their eyes. "I'm sorry," she gasped during a brief rest. "I know I'm holding you back." Jake Morrison, who had become the unofficial leader of their boat crew, shook his head. "You're not holding us back. You're still here. That's what matters." But Sarah could see doubt creeping into even Jake's eyes. She was the weak link, and everyone knew it. As they lifted the log for another brutal carry, Sarah made a decision that would define the rest of her life. Instead of focusing on her own pain and exhaustion, she started encouraging her teammates. When they faltered, she pushed them. When they wanted to quit, she reminded them why they were there. Her voice became a constant source of motivation for the entire crew. "Come on, guys," she would shout over the sound of crashing waves. "We've got this. We're SEALs. We don't quit." Something magical happened. The crew started moving better, working together more effectively. Other candidates noticed and began following their lead. Sarah realized that while she might not be the strongest or fastest, she had something else to offer: leadership. Thursday night brought the final challenge of Hell Week, a long night of surf passage, where boat crews had to navigate their heavy inflatable boats through dangerous surf conditions. It was a test of teamwork, courage, and seamless coordination under extreme stress. Sarah's crew approached the churning surf as waves crashed violently on the beach. Getting the boat through the surf zone without flipping required perfect timing and absolute trust in each other. Sarah took position at the bow, responsible for calling out wave patterns to her crew. "Big set coming!" she yelled over the roar of the ocean. "Wait for it! Wait! Now!" They pushed their boat into the maelstrom of white water and foam. The first wave hit them head-on, filling the boat with freezing water and nearly throwing Sarah overboard. She held on desperately as the boat bucked and rolled like an angry bull. "Paddle! Paddle!" she screamed. The crew dug their paddles deep, fighting against the crushing power of the Pacific. A second wave, even bigger than the first, reared up in front of them like a liquid mountain. For a moment, Sarah thought they were done. The wave would flip them and send them tumbling back to shore in defeat, but the crew trusted her judgment completely now. When she yelled "dive," they leaned forward as one, driving the bow of the boat through the wave instead of over it. They burst through the backside into calmer water, whooping with joy and adrenaline. They had made it through, together. Friday morning brought the official end of Hell Week. Sarah stood with 15 other survivors as Master Chief Peterson walked slowly down the line. She could barely stand upright, swaying slightly from exhaustion. Her uniform was torn and stained with mud, sand, and salt water. She looked like she had been through a war. "Congratulations," the Master Chief said quietly. "You've survived Hell Week. You've proven you have the basic mental and physical toughness to continue with SEAL training. But this is just the beginning. The real training starts now." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face, mixing with the salt and grime. She had done it. She was still standing. But more importantly, she had discovered something about herself that would change everything going forward. She wasn't just trying to become a SEAL anymore. She was already becoming a leader. Sarah Mitchell's real education began after Hell Week ended. The surviving 15 candidates from Class 234 moved into the second phase of BUD/S training, focusing on diving and underwater operations. For Sarah, this meant learning to navigate in complete darkness beneath the ocean's surface while carrying heavy equipment and following complex mission plans. The diving phase revealed new challenges Sarah hadn't anticipated. Her smaller lung capacity meant she consumed air faster than her male teammates during long underwater missions. The diving gear, designed for larger bodies, didn't fit her properly despite modifications. Every dive became a careful calculation of air consumption and bottom time. Chief Rodriguez noticed Sarah struggling during a night diving exercise. They were practicing ship hull searches, a critical SEAL skill that required swimming beneath enemy vessels to plant explosives or gather intelligence. Sarah had to surface twice for air while her dive buddy completed the mission. "Mitchell, stay after class," Rodriguez called as the other candidates headed back to quarters. Sarah's heart sank. She knew what was coming. The chief was going to recommend her removal from the program. She had worked too hard and come too far to fail now, but she couldn't deny the obvious physical limitations she faced underwater. "Chief, I know I'm having trouble with the air consumption," she began. But Rodriguez held up his hand. "I'm not here to lecture you about problems," he said. "I'm here to help you solve them. Your issue isn't lack of ability, it's lack of proper technique." For the next 2 weeks, Chief Rodriguez worked with Sarah during off-duty hours. He taught her advanced breathing techniques used by technical divers, showed her how to modify her swimming stroke to conserve oxygen, and helped her develop strategies for managing longer bottom times. "SEALs don't succeed because we're all built the same," he explained during one evening training session. "We succeed because we figure out how to use our individual strengths and overcome our weaknesses. You'll never have the lung capacity of Jake Morrison, but you have other advantages." "Like what?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious. "You're smaller, which means you can access tight spaces others can't. You're naturally buoyant, so you use less energy maintaining depth. And you think differently, which means you see solutions others miss." The chief was right. During the next major diving exercise, Sarah's crew was tasked with infiltrating a mock enemy harbor and gathering intelligence on ship movements. The mission required someone to slip through a narrow gap in the harbor's underwater defenses, a space too small for the larger men. Sarah volunteered immediately. Using the breathing techniques Rodriguez had taught her, she managed her air consumption carefully as she squeezed through the tight opening. Once inside the restricted area, she photographed enemy ship positions and documented defensive arrangements before successfully returning to her team. The mission was a complete success, and Sarah's unique contributions were noted by the instructors. For the first time since Bud/S began, she felt like she was truly contributing, rather than just surviving. But her biggest test was yet to come. Phase 3 of Bud/S focused on land warfare, including weapons training, tactics, and demolitions. Sarah excelled at marksmanship, her grandfather's early shooting lessons paying dividends, but struggled with the heavier weapon systems. The M240 machine gun weighed nearly 30 pounds, and carrying it during long tactical exercises left her exhausted. 3 months into Phase 3, Class 234 faced their final major evaluation, a week-long field training exercise that would simulate a real SEAL mission from insertion to extraction. The candidates were divided into 3 squads, each assigned a different objective deep in the California desert. Sarah found herself assigned to Squad 2, led by Jake Morrison. Their mission was to infiltrate a mock terrorist compound, gather intelligence on enemy operations, and plant demolition charges on specific targets. The exercise would test every skill they had learned: navigation, stealth, marksmanship, demolitions, and teamwork. The squad consisted of Sarah, Jake, and 3 other candidates. Rodriguez, not the chief instructor, but a candidate with the same name, Williams, and Chen. They would have to work together flawlessly to succeed. The mission began at 0200 hours with a helicopter insertion 20 miles from their target. As soon as the aircraft disappeared into the night, the squad was on their own. They had 4 days to reach the compound, conduct reconnaissance, execute their mission, and reach the extraction point. Jake took point as squad leader, with Sarah serving as the team's navigator and intelligence specialist. Her smaller size made her ideal for reconnaissance work, and her attention to detail had impressed the instructors throughout training. The first 2 days went smoothly. The squad moved carefully through the desert, avoiding simulated enemy patrols and reaching their observation point overlooking the target compound. Sarah spent hours studying the facility through high-powered optics, mapping guard rotations and identifying the best infiltration routes. "There's a drainage culvert on the east side," she briefed the team. "It's barely 2 feet wide, but it leads directly under the main building. I can get through it and access the interior." "Too risky," Jake said immediately. "If you get stuck or encounter problems, we can't extract you quickly." "The front and side entrances are too heavily guarded," Sarah replied, studying her notes. "This is our best option. I can plant the charges and gather the intelligence while you guys provide overwatch." The debate continued for hours. Some team members supported Sarah's plan, while others worried about the risks. Finally, Jake made the decision as squad leader. "We go with Sarah's infiltration route, but we modify the timeline. If she's not back in 30 minutes, we abort and extract." That night, Sarah prepared for the most important mission of her life. She stripped down to minimal gear: night vision goggles, a small camera for intelligence gathering, demo charges, and her sidearm. Every ounce of weight mattered when crawling through a 2-foot drainage pipe. At 0230 hours, Sarah low-crawled to the culvert entrance while her teammates provided security. The concrete pipe was even smaller than it had appeared through the optics. She would have to move on her belly, pushing her equipment ahead of her. The infiltration began smoothly. Sarah used techniques learned during cave diving training to manage the tight space and control her breathing. She made steady progress through the pipe, guided by her night vision and following the building's blueprints she had memorized. Halfway through the infiltration, disaster struck. Sarah heard voices above her, enemy guards conducting an unscheduled patrol directly over her position. She froze motionless in the pipe as footsteps and conversation passed overhead. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure the guards would hear it. The voices moved away, but Sarah realized her situation had become much more complicated. The patrol schedule had changed, which meant her planned exit route might be compromised. She would have to adapt the mission on the fly. Continuing through the pipe, Sarah reached the access point beneath the main building. She carefully removed the grate and slipped into a storage room filled with cleaning supplies. According to her intelligence, the room she needed to photograph was 2 floors up. Moving through the darkened building like a ghost, Sarah avoided simulated security cameras and guard positions. Her small size allowed her to hide in spaces that would have been impossible for her larger teammates. She reached the target room and quickly photographed the mock intelligence materials scattered across desks and bulletin boards. With the intelligence mission complete, Sarah moved to place the demolition charges. The first charge went on a structural support beam in the basement. The second was supposed to be placed in the building's power room, but when Sarah reached the location, she found 2 guards playing cards at a table directly in front of her target. Time was running out. She had already been inside for 25 minutes, and Jake would order the abort in 5 more minutes. Sarah studied the situation carefully, then made a decision that would later be analyzed in SEAL training courses for years to come. Instead of retreating or trying to wait out the guards, Sarah created a distraction. She threw a small stone down a hallway in the opposite direction from her teammate's position. When the guards left to investigate the noise, she quickly placed the charge and activated the timer. But as she prepared to escape, Sarah heard something that made her blood run cold. Real voices speaking in urgent tones, not the simulated enemy guards from the exercise. Something was wrong. Sarah pressed herself against a wall and listened carefully. Through a window, she could see vehicles approaching the compound that weren't part of the training scenario. These were real people, and they didn't know that a military training exercise was taking place in the area. The situation had become genuinely dangerous. Sarah had to warn her teammates immediately, but she was still inside the target building with demo charges set to detonate in 10 minutes. Her radio had limited range from inside the concrete structure, and she wasn't sure her signal would reach the squad's overwatch position. Making a split-second decision that violated her orders but potentially saved lives, Sarah changed her extraction route. Instead of returning through the drainage pipe, she moved to a second-floor window facing her teammate's position. She used her night vision device to signal Jake in Morse code, real contacts. Abort now. Jake received the message and immediately began moving the squad toward the extraction point. But Sarah was now trapped inside a building with armed civilians approaching and explosives set to detonate in 8 minutes. The drainage pipe was too far away and would take too long to navigate. Sarah made another critical decision. She would have to disable her own demo charges and find an alternative escape route, even if it meant failing the exercise. Racing against time, Sarah reached the first charge in the basement and carefully disabled the timer, but as she moved toward the second charge in the power room, she heard voices in the hallway. The real intruders had entered the building and were searching room by room. Sarah had 3 options: try to reach the second charge and risk encountering armed civilians, escape immediately and let the charge detonate, potentially injuring the intruders, or reveal her position and warn the civilians about the explosive device. Without hesitation, Sarah chose option 3. She stepped into the hallway with her hands visible and called out clearly, U.S. Navy. This building is rigged with training explosives. You need to evacuate immediately. The startled civilians, later identified as urban explorers who had wandered into the restricted training area, initially thought Sarah was part of some elaborate prank. It took several minutes of explaining before they understood the serious danger they faced. Sarah led them quickly to safety, then returned to disable the second demo charge with less than 2 minutes remaining on the timer. She successfully neutralized the explosive, then escaped through a rear window to rejoin her squad. The training exercise was officially terminated due to the civilian intrusion, but Sarah's actions became the subject of immediate debate among the SEAL instructors. She had violated direct orders by changing her extraction route and revealing her position. But she had also prevented potential injuries and demonstrated exactly the kind of judgment and leadership SEALs needed in real-world situations. Master Chief Peterson interviewed Sarah extensively about her decisions during the exercise. His questions were tough and direct, designed to understand her thought process under extreme pressure. "You disobeyed orders," he stated bluntly. "Yes, Master Chief," Sarah replied without making excuses. "You compromised the mission objectives." "Yes, Master Chief." "You revealed classified training procedures to civilians." "Yes, Master Chief." Peterson studied her for a long moment. "Would you make the same decisions again?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Yes, Master Chief. My job is to protect lives, not to follow orders blindly when circumstances change. Those people could have been seriously injured or killed. No training exercise is worth that risk." The Master Chief nodded slowly. "You're right, of course. But being right isn't always enough in this business. Sometimes you have to be right and follow orders. Sometimes you have to be right and break orders. The trick is knowing which situation you're in." 3 weeks later, Class 234 graduated from Bud/S. Of the original 48 candidates who started, only 12 completed the full program. Sarah Mitchell became the first woman ever to earn the Navy SEAL Trident, but more importantly, she had earned the respect of her instructors and teammates through her actions under pressure. The graduation ceremony was small and private, attended only by family members and SEAL command staff. Sarah's parents flew in from Oklahoma, barely believing their daughter had achieved something that had seemed impossible just 6 months earlier. As Master Chief Peterson pinned the golden trident on Sarah's uniform, he spoke quietly so only she could hear. "This is just the beginning, Mitchell. The real test starts now. You're not just representing yourself anymore. You're representing every woman who will come after you, Ananda." Sarah nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility that came with her achievement. She had proven that women could complete SEAL training, but now she had to prove they could excel as operational SEALs. After graduation, Sarah reported to SEAL Team 7 for advanced training and her first assignment. She knew the hardest challenges still lay ahead, but she also knew she was ready for whatever came next. Her journey from small-town Oklahoma girl to Navy SEAL was complete, but her story as a warrior was just beginning. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell stood on the deck of the USS Hampton, a nuclear submarine cutting silently through the dark waters of the Persian Gulf. 6 months had passed since her graduation from Bud/S, and she had completed advanced training in close-quarters combat, advanced weapon systems, and foreign languages. Now she was about to face her first real operational mission as a Navy SEAL. The mission briefing had been classified at the highest levels. Intelligence sources had identified a terrorist safe house in a coastal city where high-value targets were planning an imminent attack on American interests. Traditional military approaches were impossible due to the urban environment and civilian population. This was precisely the type of mission SEALs were designed for: surgical, precise, and invisible. Sarah's team consisted of 8 operators from SEAL Team 7, including her former Bud/S classmate Jake Morrison, who had become one of her closest friends and most trusted teammates. The team leader was Lieutenant Commander David "Shark" Peterson, a 15-year veteran with more combat deployments than most operators saw in their entire careers. The initial team dynamics had been challenging for Sarah. Some of the veteran SEALs questioned whether a female operator could handle the physical and psychological demands of combat operations. Others worried that her presence would change team chemistry in ways that could compromise mission effectiveness. Sarah addressed these concerns the only way she knew how: through performance and professionalism. During training exercises, she consistently demonstrated her capabilities in marksmanship, small unit tactics, and mission planning. She never asked for special treatment or accommodations, and she never complained about the additional scrutiny she faced. Slowly, she earned the team's respect. Her small size, which had initially seemed like a disadvantage, proved valuable for reconnaissance and infiltration missions. Her analytical mind and attention to detail made her an excellent intelligence specialist. Most importantly, her calm demeanor under stress had a stabilizing effect on the entire team. The current mission would be Sarah's ultimate test. Intelligence indicated that 3 high-value terrorist targets were meeting in a fortified compound to finalize plans for a major attack. The targets had to be captured alive to gather critical intelligence about their network and prevent future attacks. The challenge was that the compound sat in the middle of a densely populated civilian area. Any military action would have to be conducted with absolute precision to avoid civilian casualties. The mission window was also extremely narrow. Intelligence suggested the targets would only be at the location for a few hours before dispersing again. Lieutenant Commander Peterson gathered his team in the submarine's briefing room as they approached the insertion point. The walls were covered with satellite photographs, architectural drawings, and intelligence reports about their targets. "This is a capture mission," Peterson began, his voice steady and professional. "Primary objective is the live capture of 3 high-value targets currently in this compound." He pointed to an aerial photograph showing a 3-story building surrounded by narrow streets and other residential structures. The compound has approximately 12 armed guards, heavy security, and limited access points. Civilian population in the immediate area is high, including families with children. Rules of engagement are strict. We go in fast, we get our targets, and we get out clean. Sarah studied the photographs intently, noting details that others might miss. The compound's architecture was typical of the region, with thick walls and small windows. The rooftop appeared to have multiple access points, but they would be heavily watched. The ground floor showed signs of recent reinforcement, suggesting the occupants were expecting trouble. "Mitchell," Peterson called, getting her attention. "You'll be our primary reconnaissance element. Your job is to get inside undetected and provide real-time intelligence on target locations and guard positions." Sarah felt the familiar flutter of nervous excitement. This was what she had trained for, what she had pushed through Hell Week to achieve. "Understood, sir. What's my infiltration route?" Peterson pointed to a narrow alley adjacent to the compound. "There's a drainage system that runs under the building. Based on architectural plans, it should give you access to the basement level. From there, you'll need to work your way up and identify our targets." Jake Morrison spoke up from across the table. "Commander, that drainage route looks awfully tight, and if she gets compromised inside the building, extraction options are limited." "I can handle it," Sarah said firmly. She had crawled through similar spaces during training, and her small size was actually an advantage for this type of infiltration. Peterson nodded. "Morrison, you and Williams will provide overwatch from the building across the street. Chen and Rodriguez will secure the primary exit route. The rest of us will position for rapid entry once Mitchell confirms target locations." The plan was solid, but everyone in the room understood the risks. Urban operations in hostile territory were among the most dangerous missions SEALs undertook. Add the complexity of a capture rather than kill mission, and the danger level increased exponentially. That night, the team inserted via small boats 2 miles from shore. They swam the remaining distance using closed-circuit breathing apparatus that left no bubble trail. Sarah felt the familiar embrace of cold salt water as she finned steadily toward the beach, her equipment sealed in waterproof containers. The insertion went flawlessly. The team reached shore undetected and moved inland through carefully planned routes that avoided security cameras and patrol areas. Sarah's heart rate remained steady as they navigated through narrow streets and alleys, every sense alert for signs of danger. Reaching the target area, the teams separated according to their assigned positions. Sarah made her way to the drainage entrance while Jake and Williams moved to their overwatch position. The others spread out to secure escape routes and prepare for the main assault. The drainage pipe was exactly as tight as it had appeared in the photographs, perhaps even tighter. Sarah removed her primary weapon and most of her gear, keeping only her sidearm, night vision equipment, and communication devices. She would be vulnerable during the infiltration, relying entirely on stealth and her teammates' protection. Crawling through the narrow concrete pipe, Sarah controlled her breathing carefully and moved as silently as possible. The space was so confined that she had to push her equipment ahead of her, moving inch by inch through complete darkness. Her night vision helped, but the psychological pressure of being trapped in such a small space was intense. After 20 minutes that felt like hours, Sarah reached the access point beneath the compound. She carefully removed the drainage grate and found herself in a basement storage room filled with supplies and equipment. Her first real intelligence discovery was immediately concerning. The supplies included military-grade weapons and what appeared to be bomb-making materials. Sarah quietly reported her findings through her throat microphone. "Base, this is Scout. I'm inside. Confirmed presence of weapons and possible IED materials in basement level. Proceeding to upper floors." Peterson's voice crackled softly in her earpiece. "Copy, Scout. Find our targets and get us a floor plan." Moving through the building like a ghost, Sarah avoided security cameras and guards while mapping the compound's interior. The first floor contained living quarters and a kitchen where 2 guards sat drinking tea. The second floor had meeting rooms and offices currently empty. Sarah's targets had to be on the 3rd floor. Climbing a narrow staircase, Sarah heard voices coming from a room at the end of the hallway. Through careful positioning, she was able to observe 3 men gathered around a table covered with maps and documents. These matched the photographs of their high-value targets, but as Sarah prepared to report the target locations, she discovered a complication that changed everything. Through a window, she could see armed men taking positions around the compound's perimeter. It appeared the terrorists had detected the SEAL team's presence and were preparing for an attack. Sarah faced a critical decision. She could immediately report the target locations and allow her team to assault the building, but the terrorists' defensive preparations would likely result in a prolonged firefight with civilian casualties. Alternatively, she could attempt to neutralize the targets herself, but she was armed only with her sidearm and had no backup if things went wrong. Making a split-second decision that would be analyzed in military academies for years afterward, Sarah chose a third option. She activated a small explosive device designed to create a distraction rather than cause serious damage. The device, planted in a ground-floor room, created a loud bang and flash that sent the guards running to investigate. In the confusion, Sarah moved quickly to the 3rd-floor meeting room. The 3 targets were arguing about whether to evacuate or fight, giving her the opportunity she needed. Using non-lethal techniques learned in close-quarters combat training, Sarah systematically incapacitated all 3 men within 30 seconds. The first target never saw her coming. A sleeper hold rendered him unconscious before he could raise an alarm. The second target reached for his weapon, but found Sarah's pistol pressed against his temple instead. "Don't move," she whispered in his native language. The third target proved more challenging. He was larger and stronger than Sarah, and he managed to grab her weapon arm before she could subdue him. They struggled silently in the darkness, each fighting for control of the pistol. Sarah's smaller size worked against her in the physical struggle, but her training and determination kept her in the fight. Using leverage and technique rather than brute force, she managed to break free and deliver a precise strike to a pressure point that dropped her opponent immediately. With all 3 targets neutralized, Sarah zip-tied their hands and began searching for intelligence materials. The documents on the table revealed details about planned attacks on American targets, including specific dates, times, and methods. This intelligence was potentially more valuable than the captures themselves, but Sarah's situation was deteriorating rapidly. She could hear guards searching the building floor by floor, and it was only a matter of time before they reached the third floor. Her escape route through the drainage system would take too long, and she couldn't carry 3 unconscious prisoners through the narrow pipe. Sarah made another critical decision. She would have to hold her position and wait for her team to reach her. She dragged the 3 targets into a defensible position and prepared for a siege. Her throat microphone crackled with Jake's voice. "Scout, we see movement all around the compound. What's your situation?" "I have all 3 targets secured, but I'm trapped on the 3rd floor," Sarah replied quietly. "Multiple guards searching the building. I need immediate extraction." Peterson's voice cut through the radio chatter. "All teams, initiate assault. Scout has our targets. We're going in." What followed was a carefully orchestrated urban assault that showcased everything the SEAL team had trained for. Jake and Williams provided precise sniper fire that eliminated external guards without alerting the civilian population. Chen and Rodriguez breached the front entrance with explosive charges, while the rest of the team assaulted through windows and side doors. The compound erupted in controlled chaos as SEALs systematically cleared each room. Their superior training, equipment, and coordination quickly overwhelmed the terrorist guards. Within 10 minutes, the building was secure, and Sarah's position was no longer threatened. But the mission's most dangerous moment came during extraction. As the team prepared to evacuate with their prisoners and captured intelligence, local military forces began responding to reports of gunfire. The SEALs had to extract through increasingly hostile territory while carrying 3 prisoners and valuable documents. Sarah's knowledge of the building's layout proved crucial during the escape. She guided the team through passages and routes that avoided the heaviest fighting. Her small size again became an advantage as she scouted ahead through areas where larger team members might have been detected. The extraction to the waterfront took 2 hours of careful movement through urban terrain. The team had to avoid both terrorist reinforcements and responding government forces while protecting their prisoners and intelligence materials. Several times, Sarah's reconnaissance skills prevented the team from walking into ambushes. At the extraction point, Navy SEALs loaded their prisoners and intelligence materials onto inflatable boats for transport back to the submarine. As they moved away from shore, Sarah finally allowed herself to feel the relief and satisfaction of mission accomplishment. The intelligence gathered during the mission prevented multiple terrorist attacks and led to the capture of an entire terrorist network. The 3 high-value targets provided information that saved countless civilian lives and significantly damaged terrorist operations in the region. But for Sarah, the mission's true significance was personal. She had proven to herself and her teammates that she could perform at the highest level when lives were on the line. The doubts and questions about women in SEAL teams had been answered through action rather than arguments. Back aboard the USS Hampton, Lieutenant Commander Peterson debriefed the team on their mission performance. His evaluation of Sarah's actions was unqualified praise. She had demonstrated exceptional judgment, tactical skill, and courage under fire. "Adding none before the turnover, Mitchell," Peterson said as the formal debriefing concluded. "That was textbook SEAL operations. Your decisions in that compound probably saved civilian lives and definitely saved team members' lives. Well done." Sarah felt a quiet pride in her commander's words, but she also understood that this mission was just one step in a longer journey. She had proven herself capable, but she would have to continue proving herself with each new challenge. The submarine turned toward home, carrying its crew and the successful SEAL team back to base. Sarah stood on the deck during their surface transit, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in brilliant colors. She thought about how far she had come from that small town in Oklahoma and how much further she still wanted to go. Her radio crackled with a message from Naval Special Warfare Command. "Outstanding mission performance. Prepare for immediate reassignment to advanced counterterrorism operations." Sarah smiled as she realized her real career as a Navy SEAL was just beginning. 2 years after her first successful mission, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell had become one of the most respected operators in naval special warfare. She had completed dozens of classified operations across multiple theaters, earned numerous commendations, and been promoted ahead of her peers. But none of that prepared her for the challenge she would face on a humid Tuesday morning in southeastern Asia. Sarah was now leading her own team within SEAL Team 7, a recognition of her tactical expertise and leadership abilities. Her squad consisted of 6 operators, including Jake Morrison, who had requested transfer to serve under her command. The team had developed a reputation for handling the most complex and sensitive missions. The mission that would define Sarah's legacy began with an emergency briefing at 0400 hours. Intelligence sources had identified a human trafficking operation that was holding over 30 women and children in a remote compound near the border. The victims were scheduled to be moved to different locations within 12 hours, which meant they would disappear forever into a network of criminal organizations. What made this mission particularly challenging was the location and the opposition. The compound was situated in a mountainous region with limited access routes and heavy natural cover that provided advantages to defenders. Intelligence suggested at least 20 armed guards, sophisticated security systems, and possible government corruption that made local law enforcement unreliable. Admiral Richardson, the commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Command, personally briefed Sarah's team on the mission parameters. This was unusual. Admirals typically didn't brief individual SEAL teams, but the political and humanitarian implications of this operation reached the highest levels of government.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Admiral began, this is not a typical direct action mission. We're looking at a hostage rescue operation with extremely high stakes.
These victims include American citizens, and failure is not an option. Sarah studied the intelligence photograph spread across the briefing table. The compound was a fortress-like structure built into a hillside, with multiple defensive positions and limited approach routes. The guards were well-armed and reportedly had military training.
This would be one of the most dangerous missions her team had ever undertaken. "What's our timeline, sir?" Sarah asked.
"Insertion in 6 hours," the Admiral replied. "The trafficking organization plans to move the victims tonight under cover of darkness. Once they're dispersed to different locations, we'll never find them all." Jake Morrison raised his hand. "Admiral, what about local government support? Can we count on any assistance from host nation forces?" The Admiral's expression darkened. "Negative. Intelligence suggests some local officials may be compromised. We go in alone, we get our people out, and we don't trust anyone outside this room." Sarah felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. As team leader, every decision would be hers to make. The lives of 30 innocent victims, plus her 6 team members, would depend on her judgment and leadership. The team spent the next 4 hours in intensive mission planning. They studied satellite imagery, reviewed architectural drawings of similar compounds, and rehearsed assault procedures on a mock-up facility. Sarah assigned specific roles to each team member based on their expertise and the mission requirements. Jake would handle demolitions and breaching operations. Rodriguez would provide sniper overwatch from an elevated position. Chen and Williams would be responsible for hostage security and medical support. Patterson and Burke would handle perimeter security and extraction coordination. Sarah would lead the assault element and coordinate all team activities. Her role would be the most dangerous, first through the door, first to face enemy fire, and ultimately responsible for mission success or failure. The helicopter insertion took place at dusk, with Sarah's team fast roping into a landing zone 2 kilometers from the target compound. The terrain was exactly as challenging as the intelligence had suggested. Steep hills covered with dense vegetation that would conceal their approach but also limit their movement options. Moving through the jungle in tactical formation, Sarah's team covered the distance to the compound in 90 minutes. Their night vision equipment and advanced navigation systems allowed them to move efficiently through the darkness while avoiding detection. Reaching their observation point, Sarah used high-powered optics to study the target building. The intelligence had been accurate. She counted multiple armed guards, sophisticated surveillance equipment, and defensive positions that would make a direct assault extremely costly. But as Sarah continued her reconnaissance, she noticed something that changed her entire tactical approach. The compound's security was focused on preventing people from getting in, not on preventing people from getting out. The guards were positioned to repel external attack, but there were blind spots and vulnerabilities on the building's interior. Sarah made a decision that surprised her team. Instead of a conventional assault,
They would infiltrate the compound and attack from the inside out. Change of plans. She announced quietly over the team radio. We're going to get inside first, then work our way to the hostages. Jake's voice came through her earpiece. Boss, that's a big risk. If we get compromised inside, we're trapped with limited backup. Sarah had considered that possibility, but she believed the unconventional approach offered the best chance of rescuing all the hostages without casualties. Rodriguez, can you get to that ridgeline for overwatch? Affirmative, boss. I'll have clear fields of fire on all external positions. Chen and Williams, I want you positioned at the primary escape route. If this goes sideways, you're our lifeline. Copy that, boss? Sarah turned to Jake, Patterson, and Burke. We three are going inside. Jake, you'll handle any obstacles we encounter. Patterson and Burke, you're on hostage security once we find them. The infiltration began at 2200 hours. Using techniques learned during her SEAL training, Sarah led her team to a service entrance on the building's east side. The door was locked and alarmed, but Jake's expertise with security systems allowed them to gain entry without triggering alerts. Once inside, Sarah realized the full complexity of their situation. The building was larger than intelligence had suggested, with multiple levels and numerous rooms where hostages could be held. They would have to search systematically while avoiding detection by roving guards. Sarah's team moved through the building like ghosts, using hand signals and coordinated movements perfected through months of training. They encountered their first guard on the second floor, a lone sentry who never knew what hit him before Patterson rendered him unconscious. The search for hostages continued floor by floor. Sarah's heart rate remained steady despite the enormous pressure. Every door could contain enemies or victims. Every corner could be an ambush. But she maintained the calm, analytical mindset that had carried her through SEAL training. On the third floor, they found the first group of hostages. 12 women locked in a large room with minimal furnishings. The women were terrified and initially didn't trust their rescuers, but Sarah's calm demeanor and ability to speak their language helped establish trust. We're American military, Sarah explained quietly. We're here to take you home. But as Sarah's team prepared to evacuate the first group of hostages, they discovered that the trafficking operation was more complex than anyone had realized. Intelligence chatter indicated additional hostages in a separate building, plus evidence of a larger criminal network that extended far beyond this single compound. Sarah faced a critical decision. She could evacuate the hostages they had already found and call the mission a success. Or she could risk everything to search for the remaining victims, knowing that the longer they stayed, the greater the chance of discovery and confrontation. The decision was made for her when one of the rescued women grabbed Sarah's arm and spoke urgently in broken English. Children, other building, please. Sarah's heart sank. There were children being held separately, and they were scheduled to be moved even sooner than the adults. If her team left now, those children would disappear forever. Change of plans again, Sarah announced to her team. We've got kids in a second building. We're not leaving without them. Jake voiced what everyone was thinking. Boss, we're already pushing our luck. Adding a second building doubles the risk. Sarah looked at the faces of the women they had rescued, then thought about the children they hadn't found yet. I didn't become a SEAL to play it safe. We get everyone, or we're not doing our job. The second phase of the mission proved even more challenging. The building containing the children was more heavily guarded and had better security systems. Sarah's team had to neutralize multiple guards without raising alarms that would endanger the hostages. Sarah personally led the assault on the children's building. Using every skill she had learned over years of training and operations, she moved through corridors and rooms with lethal efficiency, her team following in perfect coordination. They found 8 children, ranging in age from 6 to 14, locked in basement cells. The children were scared, malnourished, and traumatized, but Sarah's gentle manner and reassuring presence helped calm their fears. We're taking you home, she promised each child as her team prepared them for evacuation. But as they prepared to leave the compound with all the hostages, Sarah's team encountered their most dangerous challenge yet. The trafficking organization had discovered their presence and was mobilizing a counterattack. Armed men were converging on both buildings,
trapping the SEALs and their rescued hostages in an increasingly desperate situation. The firefight that followed tested every aspect of Sarah's leadership and tactical skills. She had to coordinate her team's defensive positions while protecting 40 traumatized hostages and calling in extraction support. Rodriguez's sniper fire from his overwatch position eliminated several attackers, but more kept coming. Chen and Williams were engaged in heavy combat at the extraction point. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Sarah made one final critical decision that would be studied in military leadership courses for decades afterward. Instead of trying to hold defensive positions until help arrived, she decided to attack. All teams, "This is boss," she announced over the radio. "We're not waiting for extraction. We're fighting our way out." What followed was a running battle through the jungle, as Sarah's team fought their way to the extraction point while protecting their rescued hostages. Sarah led from the front, engaging enemy forces while coordinating her team's movements and ensuring the safety of every rescued victim. The extraction helicopters arrived just as Sarah's ammunition ran low. Under covering fire from helicopter door gunners, the team loaded all the hostages and successfully extracted without losing a single rescued person or team member. Back at base, the mission was immediately classified as one of the most successful hostage rescue operations in SEAL history. All 40 hostages were safely returned to their families, and the intelligence gathered led to the arrest of dozens of trafficking organization members. But the moment that truly defined Sarah's legacy came 3 weeks later. She was called to appear before a congressional hearing on human trafficking, where she was asked to testify about the rescue operation. Sitting at the witness table in her dress uniform, Sarah faced a room full of senators and representatives who had never experienced combat or understood the reality of special operations warfare. One senator, clearly skeptical about women in combat roles, asked the question that Sarah had been expecting. "Lieutenant Mitchell, some people question whether women belong in these dangerous special operations roles. How do you respond to those concerns?" Sarah looked directly at the senator and replied with quiet confidence. "Senator, I've led my team on dozens of successful missions. We've rescued hostages, captured terrorists, and prevented attacks on American citizens. The people we've saved don't care about my gender. They care that we showed up when they needed us most." Another representative asked, "What drives you to take these risks?" Sarah thought about the children she had rescued, the women she had returned to their families, and the teammates who trusted her with their lives. Every person deserves to be free. Every child deserves to be safe. If I can use my training and abilities to make that happen, then that's what I'm going to do. It's not about proving anything to anyone. It's about doing the job I swore to do. The hearing concluded with unanimous praise for Sarah's service and the operations she had led, but more importantly, it marked a turning point in how the military and the public viewed women in combat roles. Sarah continued her SEAL career for another 5 years, eventually reaching the rank of commander and leading larger units in increasingly complex operations. She trained the next generation of SEAL operators, including several women who followed in her footsteps. When she finally retired from active duty, Sarah's legacy was secure. She had proven that excellence knows no gender, that courage comes in all sizes, and that leadership is defined by actions rather than assumptions. The girl from small-town Oklahoma who had dreamed of becoming a Navy SEAL had not only achieved her goal, she had opened doors for countless others and redefined what it meant to serve with honor, courage, and commitment. At her retirement ceremony, Master Chief Peterson, now nearing his own retirement, spoke about Sarah's impact on naval special warfare. She didn't just break barriers, she demolished them. And she did it the right way, through excellence, dedication, and an unwavering commitment to the mission and her teammates. Sarah Mitchell's story became more than just a tale of personal achievement. It became proof that when given the opportunity, anyone with the right combination of skill, determination, and character can serve at the highest levels of military excellence. Her trident would always represent not just her own accomplishments, but the possibilities that exist when courage meets opportunity and when society is willing to judge people by their actions rather than their appearance.